And gentlemen, welcome to Torah Studies. This week's Torah portion, is Mishpatim, and I will immediately take you on a detour because tonight's class is not on the Torah portion. It's on the extra section of the Torah that we append to the Torah reading, and I feel like I should explain. So here we go. This time of year, there are 4 special weeks in preparation for Passover. Well, I can't say only in preparation for Passover. Let's just say this time of year, there are 4 special Shabbatot. One is this one. Next week is off as far as a special one. And then the following one, and the following one. So here we go. Let me explain. This is known as Shabbat Shekalim. Shabbat Shekalim. Shekalim is plural for shekel. Exactly. Next week, as I said, nothing special. As far as this goes, the week after will be Shabbat Zachar. The following will be Shabbat Para, and then Shabbat HaChodesh. So here we go. What these 4 special Shabbats signify is that after you read the Torah reading, conclude the Torah portion of the Parshat, before you read the Haftorah, you add another reading. Which means, by the way, like for the maftir. So you do a special maftir, a special reading. You don't just repeat the last few verses, special reading. The theme differs by the week. So this week, the theme is going to be on the giving of the machatz shekel, the half-shekel, that they gave initially to build the tabernacle, the Mishkan, but was also given each year, this time of year, as we'll see soon, to fund the offerings, to fund the sacrifices. They made a collection. It was a mandatory collection. Everyone has to give a half-shekel. It wasn't a large amount. And that was pooled together for the communal offerings. Right? Who paid? There was a daily offering brought every morning and every afternoon. The Karban Tamid. Tamid means consistent. Daily offering. Who paid for that? Who paid for the holiday offerings? Who paid for the wine libations? They poured wine on the altar with each offering. Who paid for that? Everyone paid for that. How did they pay for it? Once a year, annually, there was a half a shekel contribution. It was what do they call it? Like a head tax? Poll tax? I don't know what it's called. Whatever. Everyone had to pay. That's it. Half a shekel. Not a lot, but everyone had to pay. And it was this time of year. And so even though we don't have a temple, so we commemorate that by reading the section in Torah that talks about the donation of the half shekel. And then in 2 weeks' time, it'll be the Shabbat before Purim. And so we'll read a special part of Torah that talks about the obligation to erase the memory of Amalek, because of course Haman, the bad guy in the Purim story, comes from Amalek. So we read a special reading before that holiday.
Do these special sections line up with right in the Torah?
So no. You continue reading the Torah portions, but then you again for the maftir, before the Haftorah, for the maftir, you pull in we take out a second Torah scroll. And from the second Torah, it's already pre-rolled to that other place, and you'll read from a different section. So the first special Shabbat is this one. We'll read about the half-shekel. The next one is in 2 weeks' time. We'll read about Amalek and the mitzvah to erase Amalek. The third of the special, of the third out of four is the Shabbat before. It's a few weeks before Passover, and we read the section that talks about the red heifer.
Rabbi, who's everybody? Men, women, children?
What do you mean everybody? As far as the donation of the half shekel?
Yeah.
I think it was per household.
Okay.
I think every head of household had to give. Yeah, it wasn't the kids. It wasn't every man, woman, child. But excellent question. I know I said everybody. I kind of meant every household had to give. I believe so. So then you had, so that was this, and then you have the Amalek for Purim, and then you have the red heifer. Why the red heifer? Because for Passover, everyone had to bring the Paschal lamb. Like everyone had to contribute. Like typically, not every person had to be involved with sacrifice unless you had to bring one because you did something wrong or whatever, or you had something to be thankful for. But on Passover, everyone had to be involved in that offering, the Paschal lamb. Everyone had to go in on one. So you had to be in a state of ritual purity, which means that in case you were impure, you had to have a red heifer. So we read about the purification rite of the red heifer. That is the third of the 4. And then the final one is HaChodesh, the Shabbat before the month of Nisan, And we read about the mitzvah of the new moon and Rosh Chodesh, which we actually spoke about a few weeks ago in this class, in a Tuesday night class. All right, so this is the first of 4 special Shabbats with special readings that are appended to the regular Torah portion. Again, to be very clear here, we read the regular Torah portion in synagogue, but we add a second Torah. We pull out a second Torah scroll and read a little section, a few verses, maybe 5 to 10 or 15 verses from a second scroll with a theme of a special theme. This week, special theme is Shkalim, the Half-Shekel. And to be very clear, the Torah doesn't describe the annual Half-Shekel donation that was given, as I mentioned before, to pay for communal offerings. It doesn't. All it mentions is the original, the very first time the Half-Shekel was donated and contributed was when they first built the Mishkan. And so that we read that, even though they kept it up every year to pay for the communal offerings, but the only one recorded was the first time when it went to actually build the Mishkan. They paid for the silver socket, so that's what we read. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to start with the verses that talk about the giving of the Half-Shekel. And this is what we're going to read this Shabbat. And we're going to ask a few questions, which I think are going to be very, very insightful and very instructive. Okay, so let's make sure I have this pulled up on my side. Momentarily, I will be ready. And Scott, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to read text 1 in just a moment. Hold on. All right, please take it away. This comes from Exodus 30. So again, this Torah portion is from Exodus 23, 24, but this is Exodus 30. So this is the special reading, additional reading for this week.
All who are counted must give a half-shekel of the sacred shekels. 20 gerah is a shekel. Half a shekel should be an offering to God. Everyone who goes through the counting from age of 20 and upward shall give an offering to God. A wealthy person should not give more, and a poor person should not give less than a half a shekel with which to give the offering to God, to atone for your souls. You shall take the silver of atonements from the children of Israel and use it for the work of the tent of meeting. It shall be a remembrance for the children of Israel before God to atone for your souls.
Okay, thank you for reading that. And let me explain a few things. First of all, the Torah describes what type of coin should be given. And the description of the coin is a half-shekel coin. It doesn't mean you take a shekel and you split it in half. It's a half-shekel coin, much like there used to be, I don't think it's still in circulation, a $50 coin. Remember those $50 coins? Silver coins, half a dollar?
$40 coin.
Sorry?
And $quarter coins.
And quarter, right.
Of a dollar.
Yeah, that is true. We do have a $quarter coin and a tenth of a dollar and a 20th of a dollar coin and a 1/100th dollar of a coin. But this would be the half shekel would be the equivalent of the $50. I mean, I'm not saying the value equivalent, but the concept. And the Torah specifies. Again, just want to break down each verse here. 20 gerah, that is an amount. So 20. So 1 shekel is 20 gerah. Half is a half shekel. What's half of 20 gerah? How many gerah is that? 10. All right. We're doing high level math here, but here we go. 20 gerah is a full shekel. It would be 10 gerah would be the weight of a half shekel. Now,
so is gerah a weight?
Gerah is a weight. Correct. Shekel will be the coin and gerah will be the weight. Exactly. Now, the next verse talks about who should give it. And as Doreen pointed out before, it wasn't necessarily every person, man, woman, child, but every head of household, age of 20 and up, that is considered to be a household-worthy, age. And so those were the ones who gave it, and then that was used to count the people as well. So there were, okay, let's continue. I'm going to, again, breaking down the verses. A wealthy person should not give more. A poor person should not give less than a half shekel, which means, what if a person says, I want to give more? That's great. We love your generous spirit. This is only a half shekel country. Someone says, I can't afford a half a shekel. You got to figure it out and come up with a half shekel. But then look at the end of verse 15. It says to atone for your souls. This contribution occurred after the sin of the golden calf. This was one step in the atonement process. This donation was one step of that atonement. And then as you look at verse 16, it says the silver of the atonements, meaning this gift of atonement, should be used for the work of the tent of meeting. And then it says, it shall be remembrance of the children before God to atone for your souls. And that alludes to the third purpose of these coins, which is to count the Jewish people. So I want to give you, in summary, 3 utilities of this coin. Number 1, it helped at the first time it was given. They melted down the silver and they made the sockets, the adonim. They were in Hebrew they're called adonim, the sockets that the Mishkan was built from. Why do you need sockets? Well, as you probably know, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the first iteration of the temple that they built was a portable one in which they needed to be able to pull it apart and put it back together again. So it's a picture like a Lego, not really Lego, but like something made of boards, like a sukkah, whatever it is, and they had to put it up. And so the question is, when you have wooden planks, you stand up a wooden plank, how's it not going to fall over? So they built it in a way that it was a wooden plank. At the bottom of the wooden planks, there were pegs that protruded from the wooden plank. And then they created silver sockets, heavy, and silver is pretty heavy, right? Heavy silver sockets that the pegs of the planks fit inside. Boom. You got your Lego, as it were, right? I mean, that's kind of how Lego works. You have a protrusion on one side. You have the socket on the other side. Snaps together. So they put it into place. So where did the silver sockets come from? It came from the gift of the half-shekel. That created, it was a big sanctuary, a lot of sockets, 2 sockets per plank, and that's what they use the silver for. So that's one utility. The silver turned into the sockets. The silver was also a signifying atonement. The gift itself was helped contribute to the forgiveness of the Jewish people for the sin of the golden calf. And the third utility was to take a census of the Jewish people. As you might know, we never count people directly. We never say, and I'm going to point to chairs now, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you've ever been in a synagogue where they've been counting people for a minyan, you might have heard the English expression, not 1, not 2, not 3. You ever hear that? Yeah? Why the not 1, not 2, not 3? Because we're definitely not counting, right? Or some people will say a verse that has 10 words. Hoshia, es, amecha, uvarech, es, nachlasecha, urim, venasim, ad ha'olam. Or ad olam, right? That verse has 10 words to it. So if you can finish the verse as you point to people, you know you got your 10, you know you got your minyan. All to say that how did they count the Jewish people? They just counted the coins. They didn't count the people. They counted heads of household. How many were there? 600,000. How did they know? They just counted the coins. Everyone gave a half a shekel coin. Boom, 600,000 coins. That was your census. 3 utilities: sockets, forgiveness, and census. Now we need alliteration.
Wait.
Socket, census, and atonement. No, and sin, atonement. All right, socket, census, sin, atonement. Yes.
Talking about census.
Yes.
It can't be a census if they're just counting households.
It was counting the men between 20 and 60, head of household age. And from there we extrapolate.
So if a household had 10 kids of 20, then...
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
But roughly it corresponded to head of household.
Okay.
Now, that's all. All of this is opening background information. What's interesting and what the commentaries point out, and this is actually fascinating, is that the coin that was used is a half a shekel, which immediately begs the question, well, what do you do when there's no shekel currency? Like, what if shekels are not your local currency? And let's say you had to give a current amount of, this gift, and shekels wouldn't be around. So what would you do? Let's take a look at how Rambam, the great Maimonides, codifies this law in his Mishnah Torah, in the book 14 volumes of Jewish law. Dasi, I'll ask you to read this in 1 second. Please take it away. Text 2a.
The mitzvah of giving a half shekel entails donating half of the coin that is the common currency at any time. When the common currency was a darkon, everyone gave a selah, half a darkon. When the common currency was a selah, everyone gave half a selah, the equivalent of 2 denarii. When the common currency was half a selah, everyone gave that coin half of a selah.
Okay, so Maimonides goes through different currencies: a darkon, which I've never heard of, a selah, which I've seen in rabbinic literature, and dinar. All right, so fine, good. The point is, you always give half the common currency at the time, and that's why I intentionally use the example of the dollar. The dollar would be the basic currency of the United States of America, right? And a half, the equivalent would be a half a dollar. Now, you might say, what do you mean? a 25 cent, a $5 bill is currency. I know that. But one unit of the currency, we call that $1. So what would be a half? A shekel equivalent would be a half a dollar, 50 cents. But you wouldn't give it out in very important. You wouldn't give 50 pennies. You were supposed to give one coin that was the equivalent of the half value of the currency. You with me? So what we find here is something very unique with this mitzvah. Here's a mitzvah that the very first year of the Exodus, when after the people had sinned with the golden calf and they were now getting ready for this national atonement project of building the sanctuary and the temple for God to bring God back into the camp, into the midst, we find that they were obligated to give a half a shekel. And then we also find that that mitzvah of giving a half a shekel continues year after year, not to rebuild the Mishkan, not to rebuild it. It was already paid for. But rather to pay for the offerings that will be brought on behalf of the very people who are donating the half a shekel. But what's fascinating is the insistence on it being a currency, a half a coin, not a half a coin, but a half a shekel. And the obvious question is, why a half? And so, one answer might be, the way everyone can afford it. To which you might ask and push back, is that the reason why? Is the reason really because that way everyone can afford it? A half a shekel? Why not everyone can afford 1 shekel? And if you're really trying to make it, possible for everyone to do, why not a quarter shekel? Why not a tenth of a shekel, like we were discussing before? Like in modern currency, let's just speak, modern U.S. currency, U.S. dollars. If we're trying to come up with an amount, a value that everyone could give, you could either say $1, 50 cents, a quarter, a dime, a nickel, a penny. You would come up with some sort of amount. So the question is, why specifically a half a shekel? Again, everyone can afford it. Maybe everyone can afford $1 also. Why specifically a half a shekel? And to enhance the question, we need to look at the very next text, which is going to be text 2b. Because text 2b, in its own right, is fascinating. Das, if you don't mind, please read text 2b as well, which, by the way, comes from the very same text that we just read. It comes from Rabbi, Maimonides.
It is a positive commandment from the Torah that every Jewish male donates a half silver coin every year. This could not be paid in installments, a little today and a little tomorrow. Rather, it had to be given all at once in one payment.
Now the plot is thickening. You're supposed to give a half a coin, but all at once. How does that make any sense? If you're giving a whole coin, I understand you're supposed to give the whole thing at once. But here you're supposed to give a half. Sorry. It's like you're supposed to give a whole half. Right? An entire half and not part of a half. Why not part of a half? Why not say, I'm going to give the half in halves? I'll give half the half today and half the half tomorrow. No, the whole half has to be given. So is it supposed to be whole or is it supposed to be half? The whole thing doesn't make sense.
I think there's a spiritual part to it.
Well, we're not up there yet. We're not up there yet. Good. We're still establishing the facts in the ground with the mitzvah.
Okay.
Now we get into another. No, it's okay. No, you're on the right track. Yeah.
Did they have denominations where you had a whole shekel and
Yeah.
then half shekel was another size coin like we do?
Exactly. Back in the day, the coin, it's not like paper money, which doesn't have any value. It was the actual weight of the metal. So a shekel was one size, and a half a shekel was another size.
Yeah.
And so the point is, everyone had to give a half a shekel, but it had to be a whole half shekel. You couldn't give the half shekel value in installments. The question is, why not? If it's a half, so why can't you give it in installments? And if it needs to be a whole, then why not a whole shekel? Why only half a shekel? It's almost like the half had to be whole. And the whole had to be half, and that doesn't make any sense. This question is compounded when you look at text number 3. Adrian, please, if you will, please read text 3 from the Talmud, Tractate Zvachim.
Shmuel said, vessels used in worship at the temple may only be consecrated when they are whole and full.
Thank you. And here we have a rule, a general rule when it comes to the temple. In the temple, everything needs to be complete. You can't bring an offering that's, half-baked, and you can't consecrate a vessel that's only half full. It's got to be the whole way. You got to go big or you got to go home. That's the way it is with the temple. So if you were kind of inaugurating a bowl into service, the first time you would use it, it would have to be all the way full. It couldn't be half filled. It's got to be, It's got to be whole and full, and the entire vessel has to be intact, and it can't be a half a vessel. It has to be a full vessel, meaning we always like things full and whole and complete, which begs the question. That's true with every offering. You couldn't bring half an animal. You couldn't bring half the amount. You couldn't bring, and nothing could be in parts. But suddenly, when it comes to the half shekel, so when it comes to this donation, it has to be specifically and precisely a half a shekel and not a whole shekel. And the question is, why? And so that's the opening question that we have, right? A very simple question, a very basic question. The mitzvah, in short, the mitzvah is to give, to donate a half shekel. And our question is, why a half and not a whole? Especially considering that the half shekel had to be given in whole. And in general, the temple needed wholeness. So then why a half? Why not a whole shekel? And if you tell me that, well, people maybe couldn't afford a whole shekel, I'll tell you what, and they can afford half a shekel? That's the magic cutoff point. Who says? Let everybody give a shekel, and it's a whole shekel. So to understand this, as Doreen pointed out, we're going to go look at the spiritual side of this mitzvah. Oftentimes, to really understand the core of a mitzvah, you got to look a little bit beneath the surface and look at the spiritual intent behind it. So what we're going to do now is take a look at the half shekel from a deeper perspective by looking at another mitzvah in the Torah, which is the mitzvah of making silver trumpets. Now, you might be wondering, where in the world are these silver trumpets? So later on in the Torah will tell us that one of the items that had to be made for the Jewish people back in the day when they were traveling in the desert were 2 silver trumpets. What did they use the silver trumpets for? They used them to gather the people. So, and there was a very specific sequence of blast that was used for various purposes. It's almost like you have like one of these smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. So if it beeps once, it means this. If it beeps twice, it means that. If it beeps like continuously, it means you got to change the battery, right? It's like all of these, a sequence. And I don't know, like sometimes you hear beeps. I'm like, all right, now I got to pull up my reference code and like, what are the beeps for? Oh, it's always the battery, by the way, just so you know, at least for me, thank God, right? Got to replace the battery. That's the sequence of beeps. So it's like if there was 1 blast, the people had to go out. If 2 blasts, they had to come back in. Meaning there were a lot of people. And so you wanted to signal to a lot of people. This is before text and WhatsApp. You had to signal to a lot of people to everyone should start moving, or everyone should stop, or everyone should gather for, some sort of communication. So there were various, signals with these trumpets that indicated to people what to do and when to do it, etc. Let's take a look at the very next text. This is going to be text number 4. And this is going to get into a spiritual or Kabbalistic understanding of the trumpets. Now, the trumpets in Hebrew, as you'll see in a second, are called chatzotzrot. Chatzotzrot. And as we'll see, the mystics play with the word chatzotzrot. Chatzotzrot literally means trumpets in this context. But chatzotzrot, as the mystics play with it, you can split into 2 words, chatzi tzurot, or chatzi tzura, 2 half images, or a half an image. So let's read this. Mira, please read text number 4.
The inner meaning of 2 silver chatzotzrot trumpets is that a human without God is merely a half image, chatzi tzura. The human is merely dam, blood. The aleph, a reference to the one God, alone is also incomplete, as it were. However, when they merge, the whole image is full. Let
me explain what's going on here. There's a lot happening in this text. So this is from the Maggid of Mezrich, Rabbi Dober of Mezrich. He was the 2nd generation of the Hasidic movement, founded by the Baal Shem Tov. He was the next leader. And then after that, there were a lot of leaders, including the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Chabad. But this is like early on in the Hasidic movement. He passed away in 1772. So this is going back a few hundred years. What he says is, and that's, I'm saying that because like the initial mystical texts were written much more brief. And so you have to like kind of unpack it. So let's unpack this together. So keep this in front of you and let's look at the words here. First of all, the Torah talks about 2 silver trumpets, but he's saying don't read it as trumpets, but rather as chatzi tzura or chatzi tzurot, 2 halves of one. And who are the 2 halves? The human being and God. We comprise 1 unit. See, a human might think, me? I'm a whole unit. Comes along the Torah and says, you should know, because the trumpets assemble the people. You should know that you are only half. And who's the other half? Hashem. Meaning without God, without spirituality, without purpose, you're not a full person. You're a half a person. And this is not to denigrate. On the contrary, it's to open us up to a greater reality. To live a life solely focused on the material is to live half an existence. You're missing the other half. What's the other half? Purpose, meaning, spirituality, connection. That's the other half. But then he says something marvelous. He talks about dam, blood, and the aleph. What's that? What's the name of the first human being? Adam. Adam. But in Hebrew, it's Adam. How many letters form the word Adam? 3. Aleph, Daled, Mem. Adam. This could be an episode of Sesame Street. Adam. Who remembers that? Adam, right? Sponsored by the number 3. So, Adam. Adam has 3 letters. Aleph, and then Daled Mem. If you take just the last 2 letters, Daled Mem, Dam, you know what that means?
Blood.
Blood. Literally the first plague of the 10 plagues was called Dam, blood. Dam is blood. And at the end of the day, a human being is flesh and blood. Dam. But there's one more component. The first letter. We're not called Dam, we're called Adam. What's the first letter of our name? Because we're all Adam, we're all human. What's the first letter? Aleph. What does the Aleph signify? God.
Yeah.
Aleph is 1, right? The numerology of Aleph is 1.
It's amazing how these rabbis.
It all comes together. So Adam is Aleph, and so picture, separate, so Adam, human being, but split into 2. You have the flesh and blood, and you have the spirit, the divine spirit. And we are an amalgam of spirit and matter. What else are we, if not spirit and matter? And you know what the greatest proof is? The greatest proof is after 120 years, right? Upon a person's passing, you have the dam, you have the body, but what's separated out is the aleph, is the soul, right? You separates out as the divine. And that renders a person not alive. So life is a composite of not just life is a composite. We are not just flesh and blood. We are flesh and blood plus divine spirit. And so the Maggid Mizrach says, you know what the trumpets were really about? It's really a call to each and every one of us. It's kind of like the shofar is a wake-up call, like once a year, Rosh Hashanah. The trumpets also serve as a wake-up call. You're not just a physical creature. You're not just an animal roaming the earth, looking for food and protection and safety. You are, that's part of what we are, but the other half is a being that's connected with something greater. And we have a piece of that something greater inside of us. That's the marvelous, part 2 of this part 2. It's not just that human beings need to connect with God. As I mentioned before, we need purpose, we need meaning, we need something higher. It's the recognition that even within us, within our own lives, we also have a piece of that higher dimension inside of us. And that's what makes us whole. And so again, the point of this is that we are but a half. The physical part of ourselves is but a half. Again, we can look at this 2 ways. Either the human being is only half. The physical human being is half, and God is the other half. Or within ourselves, our body is half, and our soul is half. It's really the same thing. It's just we either self and God or self and soul. Same concept. Make sense so far? Okay. So now, let's keep on going. Let's take a look at text number 5. And text number 5 is coming from the great Rabbi Shabtai Halevi Horowitz, who was a nephew of the Shalah, Rabbi Yishai Horowitz, as you see in the bio, lived in the 1500s and early 1600s. And look what he writes about the soul. Tova, please read text 5 in just one moment. Let me get ready on my end. And please read that if you will.
It is widely known that the souls of the Jewish people are a part of God above. This is implied by the passage, for his people are a part of God. This means it is literally a part. It is like a piece that was separated from a larger utensil, which is identical to and part of the utensil from which it was separated. There is no distinction between the smaller part and the larger utensil, except that the utensil is the whole and larger, and the separated piece is apart and smaller. Otherwise, they are of the same material. Similarly, there is no separation and difference between the soul and God, except that God is the whole, the encompassing, endless light, and the soul is a part of this light, a spark separated from the great, blessed light.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful reading. When we say that the soul is a piece of God, what he's likening it to is like the same DNA. It's kind of like, I've heard the example that you can take a drop of the ocean and it's got the same molecular makeup as the whole ocean. Like you can tell, or even today with DNA, right? All you need is a little bit. What do you need? Even just a little bit, like a hair follicle, right? Just one smidgen of DNA. And now you know the entire sequence of the whole body of the whole person, I think, right? A little, huh? Sorry?
You have to grow it first.
Do you have to grow it?
Yeah, there's something called polymerase chain reaction. You basically take the little bit that you have and you super duper 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 quadruple it. It's
you magnify it.
Quadruple. You like
nice
thousands it.
So for DNA to work, you have to magnify the little piece and then you can measure it. But when it comes to the soul, even though the soul is very finite and God is infinite, nonetheless, it's a piece of the larger whole or the infinite whole, and therefore has the same property. So what's the point? Because we can't lose the plot, and we have a lot more to go. So the point that we've said thus far is that the trumpets, and the Hebrew word for trumpets, chatzot, remind us that each of us is only a half and God is the other half. It also reminds us that even within our own name, Adam, there's two halves. There's the body and there's the soul. And a body without a soul is, what's a body without a soul? It's garnished. You need a half. It's not even a half. You need the other half to be whole. So again, the way this would work in life is a life lived only physically, materially, etc., Nishkein Levin, it's not a life. You call that life? It's like the joke. Right? The KGB knocks on the Jewish home and says, Does Yankel Goldstein live here? The guy opened it. He says, no. He said, what's your name? He says, Yankel Goldstein. You just said he doesn't live here. He says, you call this living? You call this living? What a great Jewish answer, right? You call this living? What kind of life is it without the other half, without Hashem? And what kind of life is it within ourselves without a soul? I mean, we know what that looks like. It's not life. Imagine someone says, oh, no. Person who passed away, they're half alive because I see the body. It's half alive. It's not alive. But there's a body, there's 50% of the equation. Without the 100%, the 50% is not even 50%. So now we can have a much better understanding of what the purpose of giving a half a shekel was. When you were counting people, and when you were atoning for souls, and contributing to God's building, to God's home, what did you give? A half a shekel. Why not a whole shekel? To signify that you without God, you without your soul, you without your purpose, you without the higher power, are nothing. I don't mean that in a harsh way, but I mean that you're only a half. See, what's the alternative? I'm going to give a whole shekel. A whole shekel means, look at me. I'm a whole person. The message here is without the other half, you're incomplete. You're only half and you need the other half. And that's a message in life. It's a very profound message. Let's take a look at this. And again, we're going to build on this. So we're not done yet. We're not close to being done. There's a lot more to go with this. Let's take a look at the very next text that's going to bring this idea home, text number 6. I think we're up to me, right?
Yes.
All right, I'll read this. The birthday boy will read it. For those that didn't know, today was my birthday. Text number 6. This is the idea of the half shekel. It arouses the godly soul within us and inculcates the feeling that we are merely half, and we long and desire to unite with our other half God. And that's really important. It's really important for us to know that there's something else beyond what we can touch and feel and what, beyond our senses. It's important for a person to know that there's a greater purpose out there. Look, I've shared this many times. I remember I was sitting, so crazy because I literally remember the building and the classroom I was sitting in. It must have been, I don't know what grade it was. Is this 6th grade? Is this 8th grade? Is this 9th grade? I don't know. We were learning about the taxonomy of life, of creation, and how there are 3 categories of life. Inanimate objects, vegetation, and animals. And that's it. 3 categories of life. There's rocks, plants, and everything else. And Judaism says, hold on, there's a 4th dimension. Let's separate animals and humans into 2 separate categories. And science says, no, human beings are a form of an animal. It's all the same category. And Judaism insists on separating out humans from animals. And this is the reason why. An animal can live a full life and a successful life and a fulfilled life by being an animal. A human, to live an animal existence concerned with safety and security and food and protection and even family, but for self-serving whatever, it's not a full life. It's not a full life. And that's only 50%. There's another 50%. What am I here for? How can I improve the world? How can I benefit someone else? How can I fulfill God's mission for why God created me in the first place? This is the type of calculation that a human being must have. No one would fault an animal for being an animal, but a human being an animal. Right? You're an animal. That's not if someone calls another person that is not a compliment, right? That's shouldn't call people derogatory terms, but that would be derogatory. For an animal to be called an animal, it's no problem. For a human to be called an animal, it's a big problem. We need something higher. And that was the half-shekel. The half-shekel that a person gave reminded each and every person and us to this very day, even though we don't give a half-shekel anymore. That mitzvah has been, suspended. We don't have a temple anymore. But it reminds us that us and this physical part of us is only 50% of the equation. There's another reality without which we're not complete. You can't live a satisfied life without a life of purpose. And by the way, speaking of school, that's something that you're not going to get in reading, writing, and arithmetic. You're not going to get that. Where do you get that message that life is about purpose and life is about meaning and life is about service? I don't know where you get that outside of Torah. Maybe there's other classes in the curriculum that teach that, but it's so important. This piece of it is so critical. We talk about, why people aren't feeling satisfied, why there's anxiety and why there's other things. And my first question would be, when was the last time you volunteered for something? When was the last time you did something not for yourself, but for a greater good? Show me someone who dedicates their life to service and serving others and serving God, and I'll show you someone who has the greatest measure of contentedness or contentment, much greater than those that are just seeking to feed self. A human living like an animal is unsatisfying, and that's what the half-shekel reminds us. If it's only the physical, it's half. It's never going to feel full. Make sense? Let's go much further. All right, that's the basic. That's the basic level. So what I want to do now is talk about the second half of the equation, literally, which is why this half has to be given in whole. You had to give the whole half. What does that mean? Why is the half connected with the whole? We just said the lesson up until now is that if it's just the physical, it's only half. It's not the whole. But why did the half have to be whole? And so here's the very big idea. It's a subtle idea, and I think the best way to convey it is going to be to use the example. Hold on, let me think. I want to use a relationship example, and I think this is going to work. Okay, here we go. So let's say a person is in a relationship, and a person feels like the relationship that they're in is an extra, is an add-on, meaning they themselves are whole, meaning they don't need that other person. They would be fine on their own. This other person, it's nice. It's a +1. So I'm a 1 and they're a +1. I'm not a half and they're a half. It's not like half-half. I'm a 1 and they're a plus. Okay. In that scenario, a person is going to necessarily, by default, lack a certain level of commitment and dedication to that other party. And to use an example of conflict, I think might be very helpful. So imagine there's a conflict that comes up, a difference of opinion about something. So if my perspective on this relationship is, I am a whole, I'm a 1, and they're a plus, right? They're on top of that, then I might say, look, I have to win this. I need to win this dispute or this conflict. I want to win, and I want them to lose. Why? Because I want to be right. People naturally want to be right. So I want to be right, and if I'm right, they're wrong, and that's okay. I'm going to win this. I'm going to dig my heels in and win this dispute, this argument. That happens in a lot of relationships where there's conflict born of, I don't know, whatever it is, but each one wants to win, even in loving relationships. But imagine I had a different perspective. Imagine my perspective was that I'm not 1 and you're a +1. No. I'm a half and you're the other half. And together we make 1. You know what that means? If I win and you lose, guess what?
We both lose.
I also lose. Half of me loses and I win. How is that a win? You with me on the distinction? If I view myself as a whole, so I can win and you can lose, that's on you. That's not on me. But if I'm all, and this is not a numbers trick. It's a concept. If I view myself as half and you the other half, and together we make a single unit. So what am I trying to? I'm trying to win and make you lose in this argument. And that will be a win? How is that ever going to be a win for me? If I win and you lose, you're the other half of me. So how am I ever going to win by you losing? If you lose and you feel bad, how would I ever feel good? Half of me is hurting. Half of me lost. You understand the distinction? It's not a numbers. It's not a numbers trick. It's a concept. As long as I feel myself as self-contained, right, complete and whole, and everyone else is just an extra appendage. I don't need it. An extra +1. So I'm not going to care. But if I view myself as a single unit with the other, then I care. Because it's not me and you. Sorry. It's not you. It's really me. We're in this, we're one unit. To draw this back to our relationship with Hashem, our relationship with God, how many of us, present company excluded, let's make this safe, how many people view religion, spirituality, Judaism as a +1? I have my life. I have a good life. I live my life. I go to work. I have my family. I do that. I have all this stuff. And, as a hobby, I also on the weekends, nights and weekends, like the old cell phone plans, I also, show up to whatever it is as an extra add-on. And if that went away, nishkafelach, not so bad. But if I view myself, my physical self, as only half, and God is the other half, or my soul, piece of God, is the other half, then if I neglect the other half, you know what I'm neglecting? This half too. This half is not a half if the other half is compromised. Does that make sense? I can never be whole if that's missing. And so the message of the half-shekel is not just there's another piece to this, because I can also do the 1 + 1 = 2. It's the fact that without the other piece, my half is compromised, just like it is in a human relationship. If my loved one is hurting and I caused that hurt, how could I ever feel good about that? How could I ever feel good about hurting myself? They tell a story. I'm forgetting who it was. It was, I think, after the war. One of the great rabbis that survived the war. He was like the the rabbi of Jerusalem. Maybe Aryeh Levine, something like that. I think something along those lines was his name. And the story goes, he goes to the doctor. Sorry, his wife's leg was hurting. His wife's leg was hurting, so they went to the doctor together. And the rabbi says to the doctor the following: our leg is hurting. That's how he presented the case to the doctor. Our leg is hurting. It's not your leg. It's our leg. This is not co-opting. This is not like, there's nothing negative about this. This is saying like, it's our leg. Your leg is my leg. How can I feel okay if you're hurting? That's only if I'm one and then you're a plus one. But if I'm a half and you're a half, then I'm not whole. If you're incomplete, fine. Let's bring this home on the next level. So, when was hold on, before we continue, let's see if we can do another text in here. Here we go. Let's do text number 7. I'm going to read this as well. Text number 7 from the Rebbe's talk. All Jews, page 96. Okay, here the Rebbe elevates this to a place of sacrifice, where a person would be willing to give up their own comforts for God, sensing that without God, how can I live? All Jews are prepared to give their lives for God because a Jew is incapable of denying the one God. We sense intuitively that we cannot separate from God. This feeling is stimulated by reflecting on our innate bond with God like two halves of one image. When we sense that God is our life and our authentic selves because he animates our souls, any separation between God and us, two halves of one whole, becomes impossible. And that's the next realization. The next realization is, it's not just that God is important and relevant to whatever. Without God, I can't live. And that's what's driven Jews for centuries, for millennia, to be prepared to give their lives for their beliefs, because without my beliefs, then what do I have? I'm not a whole. I'm not a whole without it. I'm missing an essential piece of it. There's a truth in Jewish history, and there are countless stories, including in modern times, including October 7th, of Jews that if you would ask them, no other judgment, if you would ask them, so are you religious? They would say, no. Are you Orthodox? No. Are you very observant? No. But when push comes to shove, and now what's that threat is their Judaism, they will stand up and say, I'm Jewish. Daniel Pearl. What was Daniel Pearl? Remember Daniel Pearl, Washington Post journalist, or Wall Street Journal? Wall Street Journal journalist, right? His final words: I am a Jew. My mother is Jewish. My father is Jewish. His last words. Where does that come from? That comes from a sense of identity, of not being whole without it, which takes us to our final point, which is extremely powerful. What was the half-shekel used for? Remember, what was the half-shekel used for? Not in the originally, but after. For the sacrifices. Now, what's a sacrifice in Hebrew? What do we call that? A karban. Karban comes from the word karav, right? Which means to get close, right? It means to get close. Karban is how you bring an animal close to God, right? It's about closeness. But the half-shekel was given before the sacrifices were purchased, meaning it was in order to purchase the sacrifices which got a person close, which means that symbolically a person is willing to give their half-shekel even before they're close. You know what that means? That means even if a person doesn't feel close or doesn't act like they're close, when push comes to shove, the core identity comes out. And again, to understand this, we need to use a human example. Imagine a spouse who has been not so attentive each and every day, who maybe, doesn't always, let's just keep it as not so attentive. But you better believe that if there's a crisis with the other party, God forbid, a health crisis or whatever it is, they would be there and not move from the side of their beloved. So on a day-to-day level, are they always attentive? Maybe not. But when it's serious, they're there. How do you explain that? How do you explain that that separation, that dichotomy? How do you explain it? Meaning, because if you really love and are dedicated, so why aren't you there? Why aren't you on that level every day? The answer is because it's hard to live on that level. So on a day-to-day level, we live in a world of, let's say, not so truths. Not so true. Meaning we live in a world in which we get distracted by things. But when push comes to shove, and when truth is on the line, then the full measure of our commitment comes out. And that is what we call Mesirat Nefesh, self-sacrifice. Self-sacrifice, Judaism doesn't look for martyrdom. It doesn't tell you got to be a martyr. It's not in the code. It's not in the religion. But when push comes to shove, a person is driven from within to say, this is who I am, and I'm not going to sacrifice on my identity. Imagine a parent who their attentiveness to their child is what it is. Like an average parent is like, all right, the child wants attention. It's like, give me a few minutes. Like, I'm busy, this or that or the other. Oh, the child wants to go here, wants to go to a Hawks game. Say, we'll schedule it in the future. Right? Because I got other stuff. I got other commitments. But you better believe if, God forbid, that child is in a situation, right? I don't even want to finish the sentence. That parent would drop everything, including the very important meeting and all that stuff, to be there. So the question is, without the crisis, why aren't you there? Why does it take a crisis to show up? What's the answer? Because the crisis reminds you of who you are. Now you know what the trick is? Here's the trick. The trick is, when it's not a crisis, to tell yourself, if this is important in a crisis, it should be important on a normal Tuesday. If I would be there for my kid no matter what, if God forbid, etc., then how come Tuesday night bedtime, right? I mean, after the class or before the class, obviously, 7:30, 8:30, we keep that window open. Sorry, kid. No, I'm kidding. Right, but why is it that on a Tuesday night, or Tuesday morning, or Wednesday morning, why aren't we there for them? And all it takes is one thing. There's a video going around recently from like a week or two ago. What's his name? He spoke in the 96th Street. What is it? He spoke at a Brett Stevens. Yeah, and he spoke. Unbelievable. And he spoke about how we're wasting time and money fighting anti-Semitism, fighting the hate. We need to support Judaism. That's today's message.
It was great.
When do we get excited? When do we get all activated? When there's a threat. How many people would be willing to give their lives for Israel and the Jewish people? Great. That's amazing. Now try this. That same passion to live Jewishly. Not to die Jewishly, but to live Jewishly. That's the key. That's the message of the half-shekel. The message of the half-shekel is, you still didn't bring the offerings. You don't have the money yet. We didn't collect the money yet to buy the karbanos, to buy the animals. Which means we're not yet close. We're living a life that might be a little distant. You can still conjure up that half-shekel imagery, that half-shekel feeling to be all in. I'm not close, but I'm all in. Meaning I'm not close because I'm not every day necessarily, but at any moment I can conjure up that sense of, this is who I am. This is the key point. If you're willing to die as a Jew, you got to be willing to live as a Jew. Right? If you're willing to die for your country, then what about living for your country? If you're willing to put your life, who wouldn't be willing to put our life in the line to save our people, to save our faith? Great. Now what about every day? Okay, it's a harder call. Because dying for something is once. Living is every moment of every day. I understand that it's a harder. That's why it says that the test of the binding of Isaac is one of Abraham's 10 tests and not one of Isaac's tests. Why? It was a test for Isaac. He went willingly to the slaughter. Why wasn't it Isaac's test? A beautiful answer. Because for Isaac, it would have been a one-time choice to say, take me. Abraham would have had to live with that every single day, right? So sometimes it's a little harder when you have to live with something. And I get that, and that makes sense. But the key idea here is, it's true with marriage, it's true with children, it's true with, peoplehood and nationhood and identity and religion. It's all the same thing. If you can imagine a scenario where you're all in for what you believe in, because it's that critical moment, great. That means you're all in. On the inside, you're all in. Perfect. Now try to evoke that on a daily basis to live with a little bit more intentionality, a little bit more intensity, a little bit more presence. If someone would be there for their child in a moment of crisis, great. Be there for them in a moment of calm. Let them know how much you love them and are there for them in a moment of calm as well. You know what they always say after tragedy? Hug your children, right? Hug your children. Hug your loved ones. And the class tonight tells us, don't wait till crisis to remind yourself of that. If you love someone, hug them now. If you love your faith, hug a mitzvah. And when I say hug a mitzvah, I mean do a mitzvah. But I'm just using the words that we've been using. Right? Hug a mitzvah, hug a Torah, hug an Israel. Right? Hug what you believe in. Hug what's important. Hug what you would give your life for. But you're not being asked to give your life for. You're being asked to maybe compromise on a little bit of comfort now. Isn't that easier than giving? You're willing to give your life for this thing. You can't give your time for it. You can't give a little sacrifice. It's crazy. By the way, the part of us, it's all in our heads. The part of us that says that when our kid wants our attention, they'll wait. But if they were really in crisis, there would be no waiting. The part of us that makes a difference between crisis and no crisis is all in our heads. Because if we really felt our love for them, it wouldn't make a difference whether it was a crisis or not. We would be there for them unconditionally. We call that a shtus. How do you translate shtus? Shtuyot.
Stupid.
It's a foolishness. It's a folly. It's a folly of the whatever it is inside of us. And justification says, it's okay. It's okay. That's all. If it's really important, let it be really important. And so my concluding message of this class is, how much can we learn? How much do we indeed learn from this half-shekel? We learn that we are truly not whole without God. We are not truly whole without our soul. Even if it didn't rhyme, it would be true. We are not truly whole without our purpose. And if that's the case, then let's not wait for those big moments that call us to evoke that. Let's not be inspired by fighting hate. Let's live with love. Let's live with passion. And that was the message. I mean, what an incredible talk. If you haven't seen it, what an incredible talk. His name is Brett Stevens.
It was wonderful.
Unbelievable talk.
I couldn't
The whole
believe it.
world was talking about that speech. Everybody.
And you know what?
It's worth it.
And you know what? It's the message that I think we've been sharing for years. Yeah, it's online.
Yes.
It's the message we've been sharing for years. How do you fight anti-Semitism? I don't know. You can't fight darkness with a stick. You're not gonna beat darkness out. What does that even mean? You got to keep on lighting light. Be proud of who you are. Keep on doing more. If this means a lot to you, great. Then live with that passion. Live with passion. Live with purpose, and then you and I will have a whole and complete life with all the happiness that comes from it. We are light makers. Let us embrace that calling and that vision. Thank you for joining me tonight. Hope you enjoyed the class. Thank you very much, Adrian. It's amazing to see you in good health. It's great to see everyone here. And questions, comments? Pleasure.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Hamilton, yeah?
There's a line where George Washington tells Hamilton, dying is easy, son. Living is harder.
Wait, let me repeat that. Dying, who says to who?
George Washington says it to
George Washington says to Alexander Hamilton, dying is easy, son. Living is harder. That's it.
Bingo.
That's unbelievable. That's exactly this point. Dying is easy. I don't mean that literally, but I mean because again, think about it. I mean, there's stories, so many stories from the Holocaust. So many stories from the Holocaust about Jews who were in the camps, and they were not they were not like religious or whatever it was. But then the Nazis said to go desecrate a Torah school. They said not happening, and they got shot and killed and murdered on the spot. Why'd they give their life for Torah? Because that was a line. Oh, that's a good way to express it. We all have red lines. You know what the secret in life is? Move your red line a little bit further up, not back. I don't mean back. We also do that, right? But move your red line up. Like red line is I would never cross that line. Great, perfect. So now just move that into a place. Just call this a red line. When my child needs my attention, that's a red line. I'm all in on that, right? Don't take your loved ones for granted. Don't take your spouse for granted. Don't take your parents for granted. Hey, mom, good to see you. Right? Like be in that space. Wow, Torah is
Awesome.
Torah is awesome. Torah is awesome. Make sense? Yes. All right. Now there's
Rabbi?
one thing left. Now we just have to live it. Okay.
It's your birthday, so you give the bracha, please.
All right. So here's my blessing. Good. Actually, thank you for reminding me. It says, hold on, I want to give everybody a bracha, everyone a blessing. It says that on a person's birthday, mazlayu gavar. Their mazel is strong. Mazel means fortune, right? The stars are aligned. So my bracha, my blessing for all of us and for all of you is good health, happiness, success, materially and spiritually. Shalom, peace. It says peace is the greatest blessing because without peace, peace is the container that holds the blessings. And not only external, but also internal peace. Without that, all the blessings are seeping through the cracks. You gotta have a good vessel, a whole vessel. Shalom also means whole. Do you know that? Shalem means whole, and shalom means peace. Same word, same letters. Mean both peace, but also whole in the sense of a cohesive unit. Yeah, whole, not broken. And so may all of you and all of us be blessed with health and happiness and success, physically and spiritually, and peace and nachas and all the brachas. Parnasa bracha, a lot of money, a lot of resources, and to use the resources for the purpose that we've been given, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do. We're here to transform the world and be light makers. So may everyone have the power and the ability to do so, and the confidence to do so, to walk in a world that so often is dark, but to carry that torch with pride and to really light up the world. And let us say,
Amen.
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Happy
birthday,
Thank you very much.
lady.
You be well.
Thank you, Amy. That's so nice. Thank you all for your wishes. Thank you very much, Jordan. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for all the love. And see you guys soon.
Sorry, I wish it a day early, Rabbi.
Oh, hold on. Before everyone goes, I want to point out that we have this event coming up in just under 2 weeks. This is our robotics event. I'm kidding. The Future of Medicine and the End of Disease with Dr. Raymond Shinazi, who is just unbelievable. He pioneered the HIV treatment and hepatitis B and hepatitis C. 94% of patients on HIV treatments are taking his drugs. And that's coming up in just under 2 weeks. Future Medicine, we'll talk about his Jewish influences and all that stuff. But also, coming up next week, Monday, we have our big bourbon tasting situation. Even if you don't drink bourbon, come, it's going to be fun. We're going to have a bourbon tasting with the bourbon rabbi. And you're probably wondering, is there really a bourbon rabbi? The answer is yes. He's from Louisville, Kentucky. He's one of the rabbis at Chabad of Louisville, or Chabad of Kentucky. And he makes his own bourbon. He's got his own bourbon line. And we already have it. He sent a box of bourbon. I don't know if I can say that. I don't know if that's... He definitely did not send it via UPS. Definitely did not happen. But we have our hands, because I'm not sure how that works, but we definitely have bourbon from Kentucky, from the Bourbon Rabbi. We're going to sample. We've got seven bourbons to sample. A little bit. We will be completely l'chaimed out afterwards. He'll speak about the spirituality of bourbon, but also the process and how it's kosher and all kosher alcohol-related things. It'll be a good time had by all. So please join us Monday, February 16th, I want to say. All right? Hey, Nassim. Good. All right.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
And
Happy
thank you,
Good
birthday.
night,
Mother.
guys.